Hey there, beautiful souls. Welcome to InnerViews, the podcast where we dive deep into the realms of therapy, healing, and intentional living. I'm your guide on this adventure, Ivory. Are you ready to embark on a transformative journey with me? Whether you're navigating the complexities of trauma, embracing intentional parenting, or seeking self-help strategies, this podcast is your sanctuary. InnerViews is not just a podcast, it's a community. A safe space where stories unfold and healing takes center stage. Your story matters. And here, courageous storytelling is the heartbeat of our existence. We'll be exploring powerful themes like healing, navigating the intricacies of foster care, the strength found in survival, the beauty of reclamation, and the pure bliss of joy. So if you're ready to join hands with a community that understands, subscribe now. Let's walk this path together because the journey toward understanding and well-being starts right here, right now. Welcome to InnerViews, where every step is a celebration of your resilience and a testament to the incredible strength within you. Let's make this journey unforgettable. Welcome back to InnerViews. I'm your host, Ivory Bennett. Today's conversation is deeply reflective and incredibly human. I'm talking about foster care, masculinity, creativity, survival, and what it means to create home when stability wasn't always a part of our story with today's guest, Qpidluv. Qpidluv uses storytelling as both healing and resistance, and this conversation reminded me just how powerful imagination can be when reality feels so unsafe. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of InnerViews. I truly appreciate you being here with us today. And I am super grateful for today's guest, Qpidluv. So Qpidluv, can you please tell us a little bit about who you are as a person, a creator, an author, and as the world bender?
Like you stated, I am Qpidluv, the world bender. I'm an author, a musician, creator. I was born and raised in St. Louis. I've written multiple novels across different genres. I've made music, animes, comic books. I have a whole entire catalog. As a world bender, though, I feel like I was someone who built worlds to survive the one they were born into. I didn't really feel like I had a safe place growing up. I moved around from foster home to foster home, and I used that experience and I use that to create my writings, my music, and all of my stories. And my current project, the Safe Home Chronicles, this is where it all comes together. So all those fantasy stories that I've written, all those animes that I've written, they came from a place. And this Safe Home Chronicles explains that. When I really dug deeper into realizing why I was writing these kind of stories, at first I was just trying to give representation to Black faces that normally don't have representation in genres like fantasy, dark romance. But then when I realized and I dug deeper into my character creations, I realized that all of my character creations come from a broken place. They don't have any family. They don't have any lineage. And then I realized that's probably because of my upbringing, because I really didn't feel like I had a place to where I belong. And that's why I created this Forever Home project. And that is who I am as a person. So a majority of my stories, the main characters, like I said, come from broken homes. They have no lineage, but they're also strong and misunderstood. But they're finding themselves. They're going through their healing process, just like I'm doing right now in reality. So my vision is normally I create these stories for an alternate reality, but it helps me heal in my current.
I really love the idea of healing through writing. I try to bring that to the forefront of the work that we do here at Youth Voices Rising. And for me, I'm also a writer. I don't know if you know that. I do so many things. I don't always share. Yeah, I'm a writer. But I love my passion when it comes to writing are poetries and plays. That is what I love, love, love to write. I have a lot of other different forms of writing, op-ed pieces or research-based pieces or things like that around advocacy and child welfare and identity. You touched on some things. So I'm raising a little boy now. I adopted him a few months ago, and I've entered into motherhood in an unexpected way.
Okay.
And it's amazing, but it's also terrifying and difficult because I care so deeply about who he's going to become and doing the best job that I can do. But you mentioned something that made me think. It almost touches on gender. This is a little off script, so forgive me because I know I didn't give this as your question. But how does issue of gender and self-expression and identity come out in some of your pieces for those who may pick up your pieces to read? Is that a theme? Because it sounds like it might be a theme, and I'm just curious. The mommy in me is curious. The boy mom in me is curious.
Can you elaborate on the question a little bit?
Yeah, you mentioned you write for people who are not as represented in anime and other genres that you mentioned. And something you said sparked in me. It sounded, the misunderstood part and the misrepresented part made me think of how often, I don't want to assume your gender or anything either like that. Do you feel comfortable sharing?
Yes, I'm a male.
Okay, you identify as cisgendered male?
Yes.
Okay. I was thinking about in the context of gendered men not always feeling like they have the space to express themselves freely or be their full selves because of how society is structured and because of how manhood is taught to them. And so do you feel that comes out in your work at all?
In a way, because most of my characters are like hyper masculine. That's
Mm.
because I was taught growing up that men don't cry, men
Mm.
are supposed to be men all the time. You do see that within my characters.
Okay. Okay.
I do take a lot of what I experienced, and that shows in my writing and in my creations. And that's just my upbringing. Every group home or foster home I went to, I was considered, I guess, bad or unruly. But when you're going from 20 different foster homes and group homes, it's more of a psychological thing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And a part of that was a lot of the things that I was taught stuck with me. And that is one of those things. And yeah, it's presented throughout my characters as well. I don't know if that really answers your question. Really.
Yeah, it does. And I think that's a call to action for us to read your work so that we can explore that a little bit more deeply if we have continued curiosity, myself and the audience. Let's go into our next question. So what is your experience with the child welfare system and how has that experience shaped the way safety, home, and belonging? You mentioned about 20 different placements. I just heard you say homes and like congregate care facilities. So are you able to share a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. So I entered the foster care system at a very young age. I was 2 months old. My parents were both lost to addiction. And at that point was the beginning of my journey, which I felt was me being lost to the system. So I moved from a lot of different foster homes and group homes. Some took me in for love and support, and they actually loved the job that they were doing. But some just took me in for a paycheck, and I was treated really poorly. Matter of fact, the majority of those experiences were poor experiences for me. When I turned 14, I did finally meet a really good foster mother. I was with her until I was emancipated. And she kind of helped me. She kind of taught me a lot of different things because at that point I had so much going on trauma wise to where it was hard for me to build connections. I really didn't know what I was doing. And she kind of set me on the right path. So without her, who knows where I would be. In high school, she told me that I should take typing, writing classes. We shared books back and forth. When I was going through the system, they was like, oh, he can't read. He's not going to graduate high school. He's not going to do this or do that. I graduated high school with 3.5 GPA. I started writing books and everything else like that. So I definitely am proud of her for helping me be able to prove the system wrong. But that still doesn't erase the fact that before those 14 years, things was chaotic. Things were terrible. And to be honest, a lot of the stuff I don't remember before the age of 11. It was bits and pieces, and those bits and pieces were bad. So I won't elaborate on that too much, but this is the reason why I built a fictional place like Haven Ridge. This is the reason why I create these stories is because I was trying to build a safe place that I never had, and nobody built for me.
That resonates real deeply. And I think a lot of our audience members who have that lived experience can relate and understand. And it's very normal when you experience trauma to not remember pieces of your childhood. I know a lot of people who have that experience. I do have a question, and this is something that's been coming to my mind too. I realized, Cupid, love, that I didn't have, I think I had one foster family out of 12 who was a married couple. Everyone else was a single parent, and they were basically all single moms. Did you get to experience the diversity in like your foster parents, or?
I had that same exact experience because the only foster home that I realized that I actually had both parents, a mother and a father, was the last one that I was with when I turned 14 years old. Everyone after that was single mothers. And now that I'm starting to think about that, I'm thinking like, I believe that, a two-parent household is very essential to a child's growth and development.
Absolutely. Yeah. In
And
many different ways.
I do understand, like, there's thousands and thousands of kids in foster care, and normally a state only has enough to house maybe half of them at best. And so I know finding good foster parents are hard, so they tend to just put people with whoever is out there, whoever is willing. But that's not necessarily good for the child.
Or the parents.
Even though, that made it really difficult for me growing up. And I know other people experience that as well, being a part of that single parent foster home. And you always feel like you're missing something. Not just missing like your real parents and your real mother and father, but the one that you were placed into. You still feel like you're missing that connection. For me, I didn't have that father figure. I didn't have that person to play ball with or teach me this or teach me that. I pretty much learned all that on my own. And so it is, like, to me, very important that there's a two-parent household, even in this Safe Home Chronicles, when the main character, Takeem, gets rescued by the Haven Ridge Task Force. He's placed into this house full of other kids just like him, but there's two people there, a female and a male, to give them that shared experience of feminine and masculinity.
Yeah, and I think the other thing you end up missing out on too is parenting was never designed to be a one-person activity. It should be shared by at least two people, but really at best it should be shared in the context of a village. And so when that all falls onto one person who likely also has a job and a career and a personhood, it's taxing on all ends. It's not just taxing because the child doesn't get to experience a depth of parenting across multiple people, but it's also taxing on the individual to have to provide that for sometimes multiple children in the context of being a working adult who is still a person, who still has needs and identity and feelings outside of raising children. And so it's really difficult. And it does hurt my heart that a lot of women end up filling the gaps, because it does overwhelmingly seem like there are so many single women who are stepping up to the plate to offer their homes to foster children. And it has me thinking, what can we do to get more men involved to become safe spaces for children as well? And how can we further reconstruct our village so that it can be more of a support system for those homes that just might not have a father or a mother figure, and that still is needed in the healthy development of kids. All right, let's move on to our next question. So you've described your work as creating worlds built to survive a broken reality. Can you share a moment from your life when you realized the reality around you was broken and that you would have to imagine something different for yourself?
Okay. It wasn't one specific moment. It was a feeling that built up over time. So watching kids at school with their parents in the stands, that comes to their basketball games, their football games, that comes to their debates, that comes to their talent shows. Nobody was in the stands for me. And I was learning early on that I was not a priority for anybody. So I had to make myself the priority. And every placement I was in felt temporary because I was never really fully able to unpack, because I didn't know if I was going to be moved the next week, the next month, the next year. So I started creating worlds in my head to escape. And because this world did not work for me. So those worlds became 18 books. And one of those books is the Safe Home Chronicles. And to me, that is proof that you can come from nothing and still build a kingdom. You can come from not being sure of where you come from, not really having that love, that foundation, that nurturing that you needed, but still turning that into fuel to be creative, to help yourself heal, to help yourself get better. Because to me, a healing process is not a destination, but a direction that you keep heading to. I would never fully be healed, no matter how rich I become, no matter how successful I become, no matter how many people I help. I will still have my own healing journey that I will be a part of, and that I will continue to build on. And that's not to say that I'm broken right now, because I'm healing. I'm fixing myself.
Your creative work, including Safe Home Chronicles, Forever Home, and I Was Lost But Not Forever, seems to transform pain into story, music, and purpose. When did you first realize creativity could be a part of your healing? And you touched upon that kind of just being like an ever-present thing. But do you remember the age when you first started writing and creating these worlds? Were you young? Were you a little kid? Were you a preteen? And did that happen in the context of school, or was it at home or somewhere else?
So when I first started creating worlds, it was just me using my imagination. I'll be in my little group home dorm, or I'll be in my room in my foster home, just thinking of worlds through drawings and stuff. And I remembered that stuff. I remember because those times were good times for me. So I remember that stuff when I actually started developing my skills as a writer, as a creator. And then I kind of started just writing those down, perfecting those stories, and just extending those stories to create something that I believe that I could actually escape to and become. And that for me, gave me a safe home, not an actual safe home that I could actually physically experience, but one that I could have to escape to just in case I don't want to deal with what I'm going through. So Haven Ridge is a community that I built. And this community is built for people just like me, people just like you that come from a broken home, a broken system. And for me, I didn't feel like I really needed to explain how I felt like I needed to belong. So I created this place to where we all belong. So in Haven Ridge, these kids can start from toddlers through adulthood, and they still have a whole entire community designed for them. So they're going to have uh, a family system in place, and then they go to transitional living, but they're still around the same children that they grew up with in the actual Haven Ridge home. And then from there, there's still a whole community which they can immerse themselves in once they graduate high school and college, which is also built into the community. So this is an ever growing community, which they have the freedom and the story to leave once they're adults, but they don't. They choose to stay and help build this community because every kid deserves a safe home. Every kid deserves a forever home, a place they feel safe, a place they feel wanted, and a place they feel loved. And for me, I never had that. So I made it.
Thank you for sharing. It makes me think of so many books and literature. One more big question, and then three questions that I ask all of my guests who have lived experience. And then I was thinking, something you said made me think, if you want to read like a page or two from one of your stories, especially the one that you've been talking about today, Forever Home, maybe we could do that at the end. And
Okay.
that can invite people to want to buy your piece, and we can share the link in the show notes and things.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's where we are. And you can read as much or as little as you'd like.
Well, I'll read the synopsis.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, it's short, but it still gives context to what the story is about.
Okay, we'll do that at the end. All right, we're going to get to our call to action. So for many people, with lived experience in foster care like us, telling the truth can be both powerful and vulnerable. What would you want systems, caregivers, and communities to understand about listening to survivors' stories with care?
The main important thing is I don't want them to listen to respond. I want them to listen to understand. And I don't want them to minimize our experiences. And like in a lot of child care homes, they would claim that the child is acting out, so that's why they switched them to so many places. At least that's why what their excuse to me was. And my thing to say is a child acting out is not a bad child. They're probably scared. They're probably traumatized. They probably have a lot of pent up emotions and things that they just don't know how to express. And if someone is silent, that doesn't mean, oh, they're okay and it's peaceful and things are just fine. I use silence a lot because I'm a big introvert. This is a lot for me to come out on a podcast and talk and stuff like that. But silence for me is normally a protection. It's normally an armor. It's normally guardrails. So I make sure I don't get hurt any further than I already was. So when someone shares their story, they're trusting you with something fragile. They're trusting you with a fragile part of themselves. So the system, when they see children like us, I'm not a child anymore. I'm an adult, but when I was younger, or kids just like I was when I was younger, when the system sees this, they see a problem. But we don't need people to see problems. We need people to see that there's an innocent child who's probably went through so much, who needs as much care as possible, even more care than you would give to your own child, just because he's been through so much or she's been through so much. And if you can get that person to trust you, and that is an avenue that'll end up going back and forth, and that'll help that person grow stronger, that'll help give that person more direction, help that person understand more, and therefore they end up being more healed than they were before you started listening to understand instead of just listening to respond or get your own angle across.
Thank you so much. All right. So now I have to ask you the questions that I ask all of my guests who have lived experience. No pressure. And I feel you heavily on that introverted thing. Please don't be fooled because of the work that I do. It's very public facing. I have to interact with people a lot, but I am like so introverted naturally, and my social battery is always on -3%. People do not understand that. So I completely.
And I get that. I started trying to do my own podcast videos and stuff this week.
Yeah.
And it was definitely hard for me because I'm not used to being on video, being live and stuff like that. But I was trying to prepare myself to be more natural and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah. So it's part of my healing process because I was always an introvert. I was always a loner. I couldn't trust anybody but myself a lot of times. So it was hard for me to want to speak out, not without feeling like I'm being judged or feeling different than. So
yeah. I totally understand you. One of my mentors is Dr. Siri Satnam. He's the therapist on the show The Therapist, where the celebrities will meet with the therapist and talk through some of their issues really quickly. And he told me, he was like, you're not an introvert. No one is an introvert. Or he was talking to me about being shy. He's, you're not shy, Ivory. You experience trauma. And that's what the problem is. And we need to get to the bottom of that trauma. And so every time I bring this conversation up with myself or others around introversion and energy levels and shyness, I hear his voice in the back of my head. You're not shy, Ivory. You have trauma. So yes, we are working through our trauma. We're putting ourselves out there. Actually, last night I was at an event where I read one of my spoken word poetry pieces for an advocacy event thing. So I haven't done that in a long time, and I have not been on a stage in a very long time. So yeah, we have to just keep making ourselves uncomfortable and trusting that as long as we're moving forward, like you said, we're never going to fully arrive at being healed, but that doesn't mean that we're absolutely broken or bleeding onto other people either. And so part of the process is just continuing to move forward, continuing to try, continuing to make ourselves just a little bit uncomfortable so that we can grow just a little bit at a time. And so it sounds like you're on that path and I'm on that path too. And we're just going to keep moving forward.
Yeah, because a lot of people always talk about the light at the end of the tunnel, and that light for me was dead. So me doing all this, me creating all this is, and this healing process is my flashlight, so I can eventually find that dim light and make it brighter. And if you have other people around you that have that same shared experience, that's willing to help and grow together, if we all bring our flashlights, then our light will be bigger and brighter than that light at the end of the tunnel. So that is what I normally go by, kind of like the model that I brand everything off.
Thank you so much for sharing. Okay, so rapid fire. What changes do you hope to see in the child welfare system in your lifetime?
This is a tough one because there does need to be some kind of reform, because I was reading some stories the other day, like this girl, Yanni, who was separated from her child in North Carolina, and her child died and she didn't even get to have that experience. Or this other kid in North Carolina who was in 18 different foster homes in 1 year. Now, I've had that experience within the whole time I was in foster care, 22 homes, and the whole experience in foster care. He did almost that in one single year. So trying to find these kids stability, trying to find these kids the best outcome for long term. Because a lot of times in the system, they'll go through the system, whether it's a group home or a foster home, and then they'll get emancipated. And then the door closes right behind them. Who knows where their journey goes from here? There's no support afterwards, really. There's not too much support, or at least not in the experience that I had. I really didn't have any support. Yeah, I can call my previous foster mom and talk to her about a few different things, but that's not the kind of support I felt like I needed. And I feel like kids need that support and that structure. And that's what this fictional dream of Haven Ridge provides. It provides that structure. And that's what I hope for. If we can get more homes designed with a two-parent household, I know it's hard. I know it's hard to find two people it's hard to do that with people that aren't dealing with other people's kids. It's hard to find people with their own children that stick it out and stick together. And I do understand that, but there has to be some way to where either we can fund this dream of Haven Ridge and build a whole entire city, town designed for these kids that will protect them and give them what they need, or just a really deep reform. Try to get more people involved, but mainly people that want to be together to help this child and give this child a forever home in the safe.
All right, our next question. Overall, what advice do you have for people with lived experience in the child welfare system in general?
Don't give up. Don't listen to the negative noise. Don't listen to the distractions. People will always tell you that you can't do it, you can't succeed. They said I couldn't read. They said I had learning disabilities, or they said this, or they said that. And ever since they told me that, my mission to prove them wrong. Every single therapy session I was in, yeah, they always asked the same questions. It always felt like I was going through the motions. So sometimes I just gave them answers they wanted to hear. But deep down inside, I was listening. I'm like, they really don't know me. They don't know what I'm capable of. Only I do. And I was able to prove them wrong, and so can you. Just because they say that you're broken doesn't mean that you can't fix yourself.
Beautiful. And last but not least, Qpidluv, who are you without the trauma of child welfare?
That is a good question. And that's what I'm trying to figure out right now. That is a part of my journey. I don't know who I am without the trauma because I'm still dealing with trauma. So me trying to figure that out is me going through this same process I'm going through now with talking to you, talking on my podcast, writing stories, hoping people can connect with them, because maybe that'll give me some kind of light of what life would be like if this trauma didn't exist. If I could help one person, if I could help one child in foster care, one child in a group home, one child or one young adult that is emancipated and aging out. That is what building it with this Forever Home project. And that right there is the reason that this trauma that I have will always linger. It will always be there. But how I deal with it, how I move on from that is very important, and how I use that to be able to help other people move through it and I wouldn't say get past it, because you're not going to get past the trauma. It's always going to be there. You could see as many therapists as you want. You can talk to as many friends, consult with as many people as you can, and you can create as many things, create using your imagination, different stories, different movies and things like that. But that trauma's still there. And what I can say is I probably don't want to see myself without that trauma, because that trauma built who I am as a character and built who I am as a person with lived experience that's helping other people that share the same experience with me. And yeah, so.
Thank you for sharing that. I'm starting to rethink even asking this question, and it may sound strange because who are we without our lived experience? That did shape who we are foundationally. And I think the bigger question that I'm coming to the arrival of at this point in life is, okay, who else am I also? Because I'm never going to exist without the trauma of living in foster care, of being in foster care for 17 years. But who am I outside of that? Or in addition to that, what are the identities that I hold outside of that are just as valuable, that are just as important, that are just as at the forefront of who I am, or that I need to give permission to be at the forefront of who I am? Because that's just one part of my story, not the entirety of my story. So I'm rethinking that question too. And I'm sure as a writer, you're probably like, what, Ivory? What kind of question is that? But yeah, that's where I am. But thank you so much for coming on InnerViews and sharing your story. If you ever want to come back, feel free to let us know. Hopefully in the future you can write for us. And if you're interested in sharing an excerpt with our audience, feel free, give us the title, where we can purchase it, and then I'll let you take it away from there. Thank you so much for joining us today.
All right. All right. So I will keep this quick and short. I'll just read the synopsis on the back of the book for you all. But book is called The Safe Home Chronicles, Forever Home. And this story follows the story of Takim. So some kids are raised, others are rebuilt. Takim was found with no past. He had no voice. At Haven Ridge, he was given something he never ever had: a name, a system, and a chance. But healing isn't simple. His silence protects him. His basketball defines who he is as a person on the inside. And the one person who understands him might be the one who helps him change everything. So he actually meets someone from his past in the story that he had a shared experience with in foster care before everything went traumatic. And he was found in an abandoned building. And once he was rescued by the Haven Ridge Task Force, he was taken to Haven Ridge, and she happened to be there too. So this character does not speak. He communicates through writing. And he's one of the first people that he communicates with. So yeah, so even while he's on the basketball court balling, he doesn't talk to anybody. So he shows things through emotion and through his writing. So he communicates with his friend groups through his writing. And he was grouped with a group called the Haven Five, which is a group of 5 other rescued kids, because most kids in Haven Ridge are kind of grouped in with whoever came in with during orientation. And that is their family at this moment. So that is their current families. And she ends up being a part of that group as well. She ends up moving because she had that shared connection with him in the past. And that becomes his anchor, his person that he can actually express his thoughts, his feelings to.
Thank you so much for sharing. And we're going to share that information in the show notes with the audience. So feel free to grab that book and support and leave a beautiful review of it once you've experienced it. Thank you so much again.
And I will send you over that information to whether you can find the book, where you can find the audio book. And we do have a bundle. I'm sorry. It is an audio book with a soundtrack of 12 original songs, some from me, some from other artists. but we all contribute to this Forever Home project.
Okay.
And yeah, it comes with the bundle. You could also get it separately, but all of that's on my webpage at foreversafehome.com. But if you're looking for a specific experience, like you just want a paperback from a site that you recognize, like Amazon, I can give you that as well.
Okay, awesome. We'll put all that in the show notes so they can grab that. But yeah, any final words?
Just keep on healing. That light at the end of the tunnel is not always going to show itself to you. That's why you always have to keep batteries in your flashlight. And when batteries, I mean, you can always keep a clear mind and you keep your focus on making yourself better.
Qpidluv, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, Ivory.
The InnerViews podcast is a production of the Safe Camp Audio Network, which is a division of Youth Voices Rising via Fostering Media Connections. Please visit safecampaudio.org on the web or Safe Camp Audio on all major social media. This podcast was produced and mixed by Christine Onjoko. If you enjoyed this episode, we'd love it if you consider sharing, subscribing, and or giving us a 5-star rating on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you download your podcast.